Now, we've talked about who is taxed, and it may or may not be you. If you're an employer or you're withholding income taxes on foreign corporations or non-resident aliens, then you're liable. But what is taxed? The code says that it taxes taxable income. And at first glance, that appears to be under their definition of taxable income, which is gross income minus deductions. However, their definition of taxable income and their means of arriving at taxable income is a little more complicated than that. It tells us to look to the regulations, and in particular, it tells us to look to regulations such as Code of Federal Regulations, Section 861, which tells us how to calculate taxable income from sources of income from within and without the U.S. Now, what do we learn from these is shocking, nothing less than shocking. And that the first thing that we find out from these sections is that in addition to the deductions set out in the code that you and I are familiar with, that we also should deduct those items of income that cannot be included in gross income to start with. Now that tells us that there are items defined in the definition of gross income that cannot be included in gross income. Otherwise, there'd be no need to deduct them. It's one step farther. We go to 861.8, where it tells us to find a list of those things that can be included, and we find nothing that pertains to the average working stiff here in the United States. The items that they show are all foreign income, income from the territories, from Virgin Islands, from sources on merchant marine vessel contracts. If you're engaged in any of those, then perhaps your income is taxable. But if not, maybe it isn't. Now in 861.8t, we find another little shocking revelation, and that is that some income is actually exempt from income. Now these are vestigial remnants of previous provisions that acknowledged openly that some income should not be included in gross income because it is exempt from taxation by the federal government. In other words, those items that cannot be taxed by the federal government under the Constitution. It also, in these previous versions of the code and the regulations, frankly admitted that some items of income are not income within the meaning of income as defined in the 16th Amendment and the Constitution. Nowhere in the income tax law do we find a definition of income. Income has been defined by the Supreme Court, but not by the statutes. The question here, though, on taxable income is that the government has indicated to us now that the only thing they're taxing is what is taxable. And they say these things are not taxable, such as exempt income and income that cannot be included in gross income. Yet they don't tell us what is exempt. It gives us 4 examples of what is not exempt, not what is exempt. And all 4 of those examples are examples of income that is not from the average typical American. 3 of those 4 are foreign sources, and the 4th is from the territories, any territory of the United States. But are you living in a territory? If you're earning money from a territory, then your income wouldn't be exempt. If you are not, then perhaps it is. The point that we have here is that the statutes and the code and the regulations promulgated do not establish that your income, very likely, if you're working for a living and earning wages, fails to demonstrate that your income is clearly and plainly within the scope of the income tax law. We know that you, more than likely, are not among those made liable, and now we know that your income may or may not be included. But as we pointed out at the beginning, if your income is not expressly and clearly and plainly identified as taxed, then your income is not taxed. You cannot tax someone by inference or implication. It has to be clear and plain. So the next thing that you have to do is to find out, is your income within the constitutional power of the United States to tax? Is it exempt under the Constitution? Is your income really income within the meaning of the 16th Amendment and the United States Constitution? And I think that just as I was surprised to learn some things on this, that you will be surprised too. I was shocked to learn that the 16th Amendment did not authorize the income tax, as I'd always been taught. This isn't me telling you this. This is the Supreme Court telling us this time and time and time again. I was also surprised to find out that much of my earnings over my lifetime have been exempt from taxation because either they were outside the taxing authority or they were exempt because they were the result of my exercising a fundamental right, just like the right to free speech and the right to worship as I choose. All of these different exemptions, all of these different limitations on the power of the federal government to tax are covered in the memorandum that you can obtain at the liefreezone.com. That's liefreezone.com. You can obtain this memorandum, download it, read it, educate yourself. Taxable income is a segment that we could spend an hour and a half on and not complete. But you know now that the statute does not clearly define taxable income, does not define the income at all, and it states that some income is not taxable and that some income is exempt. But it doesn't identify which income is not taxable under the Constitution. It does not tell you which income is exempt from taxation. And so it's up to you to dig it out and find out, because up until now, you've been filling out your forms, and the chances are that you've been filling out your forms to include non-taxable income. And again, who do we have to blame for that? The government can say, all I asked you to do was to put down taxable income. I warned you that some income is exempt and not taxable by the federal government under the Constitution. I warned you that some income is not really income, that just because you received money doesn't mean it was income within the meaning of the 16th Amendment and the Constitution. So who's to blame if you keep on putting income down that is not taxable, or income down that is not income, and paying taxes on it? Are you going to continue to do that? Or are you going to continue to educate yourself and find out what your rights are under the law? Not according to me. Not according to other people who say they know the law. I'm talking about the law according to the United States Supreme Court, according to the Constitution itself, and according to the statutes and the regulations that the government has written, not me. Everything that I have told you so far is exactly what they said, not what I said. And so be not fooled by these implications. Do not continue to be fooled by your own lack of understanding of your rights. This is an awful lot of your sweat, an awful lot of your toil represented that the government has been taking for years, for generations. Find out. Go to liefreezone.com. Get the memorandum. Read the material on that website and learn for yourself what income is truly taxable under the income tax law.